This is an introduction to the basic language. This is chapter 1. This is the part 1 video of our understanding of BASIC. So if we recall, we know that a computer can process information, it can make comparisons, it can do math for us, and it can spit things back out at us. It will take that information in, process it, and spit it back out. And so we need to, in order for the computer to do all of those things, we need to be able to write a set of step-by-step instructions for them to do that. Now, a program itself is the entire application. It is what the computer uses to execute the task. You know, your Snapchat is a program. But within the program, oftentimes we have a set of step-by-step instructions that we refer to as an algorithm. Sometimes algorithm and program are used interchangeably, but an algorithm tends to be just a small set of, it can be a small set of instructions within a program. And as we go through the year, you'll learn a set of predefined type algorithms, whether it is to search for something, or it is to repeat a set of instructions, then that is where we will redefine this idea of what an algorithm is. Programs are written by a programmer. They don't just happen by magic, so we need to know how to write those executing lines of code. And so we need to recall that a computer outputs what the programmer tells it to do. If you tell it to do the wrong thing in the wrong order at the wrong time, then you're not going to get the output that you want. If you write a good set of executing lines of code, the program is going to work the way you intended it to work. So a lot of thought and process needs to go into writing a program. A lot goes into creating your Instagram or your Snapchat. So we need to understand that we will program in a high-level language. Those are English-type words used that are best understood by humans to create these executing lines of code. The computer only understands a machine language, and so although we write in high-level language, BASIC is one of them, C++, Java, Swift, Ruby, Python, the computer doesn't understand those English type words, and so it only understands machine language, which eventually brings it down to those ones and zeros, that idea of the binary. And so we need an interpreter or compiler within the computer to translate that high-level language to that machine-level language. And an interpreter and compiler do the same thing to the language, but it just does it in different ways. One will take it one line of code at a time. The other one takes it in chunks of code to process it into a lower level language for the computer to understand. Keywords are important in creating and executing line of code. All of the languages have their set of keywords, their set of reserved words that are specific to the language. I could write for you 3 different ways of getting information out to a display screen, you know, one in BASIC, one in C++, and one in Java. Every language has its set of reserved keywords. And so that's the difference. It's like going from Spanish to English to German or to French, is we all have the same words that mean the same thing, okay, but we just need to learn how to say it in that other language. Commands are reserved words in BASIC that allow us to execute the program. When we're working in an IDE for our Python or C++ or Java, we don't necessarily have the keywords to execute them. The IDE will do that for us. So the foundation of every program is, how do I write that executing line of code? And again, it's going to be specific to the language, but for the most part, they all share similar characteristics. Now, the unique characteristic of BASIC is it does require a line number. That's just the age of the language. It does require a line number. It also, and is true for all languages, requires the keyword. The keyword are the action words. What do I want it to do? And then what do I want that action to specifically be? So it takes 3 items to create an executing line of code in BASIC: a line number, a keyword, and then what is that keyword going to do for us? So a keyword, as I previously mentioned, is a predefined word of the language used to write an executing line of code. They are reserved words to the language, meaning they can't be used for other executions within a program. We'll talk about variables in the next chapter. I can't use a keyword as a variable name. Okay, keywords are, like I said, reserved words. Now, BASIC is not a case-sensitive language, so that isn't going to worry at this point. When we get into Visual Basic later in the year, it is case-sensitive, meaning that if I use an uppercase letter as the first letter and the rest are lowercase, that's going to be different than me writing it in all capital letters or all lowercase letters. But BASIC is not a case-sensitive language. So our first keyword is going to be rem, R-E-M. This keyword is used to make a remark or comment within a program. The line of code is a non-executing line of code, meaning it will be ignored by the computer, but the programmer sees this line of code. And what we use this for is to share documentation. You know, who wrote the program, when was it written, some specifics about the program. If we were troubleshooting, when I chunk out pieces of the program, like what is this chunk of code for, we use rem statements to make comments within the program. So we also have print keyword. Print allows us to display information to the display screen. So that will be our first interaction in this chapter, is the ability to put information out to the screen. We can put information out in the screen in 2 different ways. We have what we call a literal. This is a message enclosed inside quotation marks, or a variable that represents a string. So I will use the word string and literal interchangeably, but it is the idea, it's a set of characters inside quotation marks that are literally going to be displayed to the screen. We also have the constant. A constant is an actual number or a variable that represents a number. So I can actually produce a math operation like 5 plus 10, and that becomes a constant. That idea of a numerical value, a mathematical expression, would be considered a constant. We can also display blank lines to the screen. So here's an example of 6 lines of executing code. And if we recall my keyword rem were just comments. And so line 20 is going to be a remark within the program. It just tells you that Mrs. Kiskaden wrote this program. Line 30 just tells me what the program is, that this is going to print a series of lines. Line 40 is just used as a spacer. It's being ignored, but it helps chunk out and it makes the code easier to read. Line 50 is the first actual executing line of code. It says to print. The keyword is print. What am I printing? It's going to print, "Hi, I'm a friendly computer," to the screen. Line 60 then is going to also print in a new line, "I follow instructions from a program." Line 70 is the keyword end, which is going to terminate my program. Anything that follows the keyword end will not be executed in a program. So if I had a line 80, line 90, line 100, they will not execute. So we see our line number. Remember, there were 3 key components to every executing line of code. We have keywords, our rem, our print, and then we have the action. What do I want it to do after the keyword? So when we get into class, we are going to start with our Getting Started program, where we're going to tell it to print "Hello World" to the screen. So let's talk about a couple commands that will be necessary for that. New is a command. What it will do is it will clear the computer's memory of other basic programs so that it's going to clear the working memory. List allows me to list the whole program, and we will see that as we're working in BASIC. Sometimes, we only start to see chunks of code and so forth. And so I want to be able to list the entire program in order. The command list will do that for us. I can list just a chunk of code. So if I type list 10-150, it will list just the lines of code that are between 10 and 150. Run is the command that will allow me to actually execute my program, and so that it will run through its lines of code. System allows me to exit BASIC. CLS will clear the screen. If I hit 10 enter, it deletes a line of code. That actually doesn't work. I actually have to type the word delete and the line number. So there should be a delete out in front of here. That actually is how it needs to work. That will actually delete line 10 of my code from the memory. And this will allow me to delete a chunk of code. So anything that is between line 10 and line 70 inclusively will be deleted. We also need to be able to save our program. We can save our program in a couple different ways. We will specifically work in this environment here. This will create a .bas, which is no longer editable. I can't change it. Okay, I won't be able to change it, what's going on in the program. This one saves it as a text file. And so this one allows me I can update it anytime I want. And so that is very useful to create as a text file. Also will allow me to print it. Every once in a while, I'll ask you to print your code. And then we need to certainly be able to load our program into the IDE and so that I can execute it. So our two, these are both the same. They both share the same command, but the extension behaves differently. Okay, and then the ability to load our program into BASIC so that I can execute it.